independent.us. I'm Dr. Stephanie Ardrey.
I'm Dr. Andrea Le.
Hey, Andrea, good to see you. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to see you today. How's the weather in Vegas?
So it's a little chilly. And they've been saying that, we can't talk yet, no snow, but it's definitely a little bit chilly. What about you?
It's chilly and cloudy here today in Southern California. I
Yeah.
woke up early this morning, my 5 a.m. routine, and, getting up, meditation, exercise, getting my day started. So it feels great.
Fantastic. Well, I think we have a great episode planned for today. Last week, we really began the conversation where we got into retirement. But before that, we were going to make sure that we shared a little bit about our background. So I know that both being an entrepreneur and all of that stuff, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about, who Dr. Andrea Le is?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm a pharmacy doctor for over 20 years. I'm also a retirement planner. So, as the regional marketing director at First Financial Security, I am very passionate about helping others to achieve financial freedom and generational wealth. My objective is to bring financial literacy and education to the people and also help them to reach their financial goals and objectives. So specialize in wealth generation protection and estate wealth planning for individuals and businesses. There are wonderful, instruments, financial instruments and strategies out there that you may not consider that could provide you a lot more earnings and tax advantages and protection from the market volatility.
Excellent, excellent. And that is why it's so important to be able to have this conversation. And for everyone, my background is, you'd say, I probably call myself the entrepreneur's whisperer. I'm mostly an entrepreneur, as well as I've served as a corporate executive and part-time educator in terms of educating talent. But my areas of focus include wealth creation by using entrepreneurship. So I am always looking at venture opportunities, as well as having deep domain knowledge about using real estate and insurance and other capital tools to create generational wealth. So I have a Doctor of Business Administration and International Business. I completed my doctoral dissertation on venture capital for independent filmmakers. And I have a law degree, a Juris Doctor. So I'm able to look at business not only from my personal levels of experience, but also in terms of structuring venture, basically able to address not only capital, but structure and legal requirements for those entities. So again, excited to be able to have this conversation. So I guess without any further ado, we have a real exciting segment today, because last week we were really talking about, we left off picking up a conversation around retirement. And we were talking about how one thing is, a lot of times people think, well, when do I need to start planning for retirement? And I know you had some thoughts about that. When should someone ideally begin planning for retirement?
That is a very good question. Starting retirement saving early is very important. Planning it early is very ideal. Nearly half of the retirees said they waited too long to plan for their retirements, and when
Wow.
they, to get to that point, it's not late, but you lose a lot of time. A lot of people say time is money. So when you start young to plan for your retirement, time is on your side. So for those in their 20s and 30s, retirement seem like a far off event. You might focus on establishing your careers, paying off your student loans, or starting a family. Why those are, important pursuit, essential pursuit, but starting your retirement saving early can offer a lot of advantages. First thing is what uh, the most common one is compound interest, right?
Compound interest. Compound interest is very important. We always talk about the rule of 72, right?
Right.
And the opportunity of compounding over a period of time. And that's the thing that people don't realize. I always say that if you start early, you can start with less, but the longer you wait, the more you have to make up for that lack of window as it relates to compounding. So maybe you could have socked away 100 or 200 or 300 in the early days of your career. Maybe that's in your 20s, but if you're starting in your 30s or 40s, instead of 100, it may need to be 1,000, to make up for
Exactly.
that lost time.
It's a lot more if you start it later in life. The earlier you start saving for retirement, the more money you have to grow. You have more money to grow. Compounding interest can grow exponentially, and it leads to a larger nest egg for you when you retire. Um, Compound interest is considered the eighth wonder of the world. Do you know that?
Yes.
It's allow your interest to earn on top of its own interest. So it's like amplifying your saving significantly over time. So the key takeaway here is saving early, often, and invest. What you save, and just allow the power compounding for a long term period of investment.
Yeah, and I think it's also to consider you have to have diversification because not all vehicles are the same and not all vehicles grow at the same rate. And so when we're talking about adjustments to rates, when the Fed is making rate adjustments, then typically that impacts the value of what's offered in plans. And so you also want to make sure that your investments are not necessarily losing value. And oftentimes that happens as well because, most economic cycles are cyclical. So you
Exactly.
will have a boom or a bust cycle where there's a period of growth, and then there also might be a period of retraction. Again, we like to look for vehicles that at least if there's a period of retraction, if it's a bear market, that you at best case scenario are not losing value, even if you're not realizing growth, just to be able to stay at a fixed position because the other happens in some environments, depending upon, again, the vehicles that you're using, that you're losing value. And so no one wants to lose value, but we heard of those horror stories, especially following significant market shifts where portfolios are devalued significantly, 30, 40, 50% of the value lost because of a shift in the marketplace.
And when you start as a younger age, you can take a hit. I mean, you get a higher return starting early. You can afford more risk. Your risk tolerance is a little higher, so you can afford getting higher returns, but also a higher risk, and you have time to recoup and also to earn it back later in the years. But if you start too late in your 50s and 60, you don't have much time in your horizon to accumulate, and you cannot afford any market downturns at that point, because at 60, if there's a market hit of negative 30%, we're talking about if you have $1 million in your 401k, that's $300,000 gone. So it's important that you start early, because the risk and reward is based on the age and the time horizon that you have.
Right. And so when we think about that, I mean, we had talked about even not only what you're thinking about for yourself, but also how you build, if you will, the habits with family, especially in particular, we were discussing the importance of women, which in many cases, not all, but in many cases, if there is a split, typically are the primary breadwinners if they have children, and may have children that they're navigating. So oftentimes women experience career interruption. Not all, but in many cases. And so as a result of that, some of the earning years are lost to family and child rearing duties. And so it's, how do you make up for, again, those years that may be, typically lost in the marketplace? How does one create other streams, multiple streams of income and passive income, so that it's not just income that's based upon your individual performance?
And starting early can provide you more financially stable, because with a solid financial foundation, you can covering the unexpected, like medical expenses, helping out a family member in an emergency. Those are not planned in the your retirement. So when that comes, or when you run into a situation when you are 65 and those expenses coming up unexpectedly, then you have to go in toward unretiring phase. That is a trend of people going back to work after retire, because it could be due to many reasons for coming back to work, but one of the main reason is to come back to work because of financial need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And, not all employees benefit from necessarily a 401k, but if you do have access to a 401k as a tool, you want to evaluate, because a lot of times employers will offer certain matched funds, which is another vehicle to increase what your 401k can do. So I always encourage people that if it is that you have a match, then definitely make sure that you maximize what
At
you're
least that match.
contributing to that 401k to get that match, because again, that is additional dollars added towards that growth possibility for your interest and benefits. So why not take advantage of that free money, if you will?
401k is a great vehicle for savings. Did you know 401k established in 1978? That's when the tax bracket was at 70%.
Mm.
It's really high. That's right. The reason why the 401k came about, to help people to save, defer their tax. But there is a misconception that people think when they put the money away, it is tax deductible. It's not completely tax deductible. It's just tax defer. So IRS is really your business partner in your 401k. So you have to be careful. Of course, get the match from your company. That is free money, but also watch for your investment portfolio. And if you accumulate a lot of cash, or over the years, it's accumulate for a big chunk of money in the 401k, think of an exit strategy where you can minimize that tax. And there is a way to do that, because otherwise, when you access that money at 73 now, is the required minimum distribution. If you don't take it out, the IRS will fine you.
Oh, wow.
And if you take it out too much, you'll get a lot of tax. So there is a right amount of money to take out based on your retirement need, and also the provisional incomes. Not a lot of people are aware of that. The Social Security can account about 30% of your retirement, but it's not enough to for the income gap. So 401k, your IRA, your other investment will fill up the income gap, and that's considered part of your provisional income too. So the higher the provisional income, your Social Security can be taxed up to 85%.
Wow.
Up to 85% of that Social Security amount can be taxed. So talk to your financial professionals who can sit down and plan for you, and see how much do you want to have for retirement? When would you like to retire? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? And start early. The earlier you start, is the better. Because considering I was just doing the math, if you start out just $100 for a little kid, 1 years old, that baby can end up with over $1 million at retirement in the account
Absolutely.
if you consistently just $100 a month,
Yes.
and that could be used toward college, weddings, whatever the reason that you want to take it out for later on, that can be used and access that money without any restriction compared to 401k. 401k is a great vehicle, but there are restrictions that you have to comply with IRS. But there are other vehicles and instruments that you can use, to have a better investment.
Yeah, it's true. And it's funny that you bring that up because it's so important. I think about this, especially when we come off of the big consumerism cycle where people spend a lot of time on gifts and things that, in many cases add no value long term. I'd rather redirect those spends on so-called, gifting and birthdays into things that will accumulate in value and create a longer term, impact. So I think that we should really take time to rethink, some of our gifting and how we uh, raise and encourage and educate our young family members, so that they are less likely to just buy into consumerism and more likely to consider how it is they are allocating the capital that they have under their purview. Another thing that, is important to consider because it will come up is different health opportunities, health programs, ways to protect and mitigate and have resources available for your health, for your wellness, because oftentimes, again, as we begin to age, is when we experience cumulative impacts of, again, lifestyle choices. So oftentimes there's been a little bit of imbalance and that shows up. And so you need to be able to have the resources available to do a course correction, hopefully mitigate any major medical conditions, but on occasion, major medical conditions arise as well. And so we know that it's important to have different tools, long-term care, health care benefit programs that you can pay into. What are some of your thoughts around using those different tools?
There are vehicles out there that you can invest in and get the protections. First of all, the protection is to protect your wealth, because in a medical event, you could end up. Did you know that people file bankruptcy based on medical expenses? That is the main reason. So a lot of people are not planning for those major medical expense when we getting very, very sick that we no longer can work. Where do you get that money from? You save some money in the emergency fund, but that is not enough. What about your house? You have to sell your house to pay for medical expenses. And that is, a house, to acquire a house, it takes a long time, right? It's a process of taking 30 years to pay off that house. But now you at 65 and getting hit with a big medical bill, how do you take care of that? There are plans that we can set up in advance to protect yourself in event of critical illness, critical injuries, and terminal illness that were not expected, and also untimely death. Who would expect that, right? I mean, it could happen to anyone. We don't know if we're gonna walk out of this house and coming back, and who's taking care of our loved ones at home
Absolutely.
if you're
Absolutely.
gone.
Mhm.
You don't want to put your children in the hands of a stranger to take care GoFundMe or whatever the all the resources. You want to take care of that in advance for your loved ones. The third is living too long. That is another risk. It's a good thing, but if you don't plan in advance, you can be running out of money at age 75, and going back to work at that age is not fun for financial need.
Right, right. No, definitely. Those are things to consider. And you're right. I notice on the real estate side, I end up encountering both families that find themselves thrust into a probate situation because unfortunately there was an untimely passing. And it's time to scramble to try to get things in order. And if you're caught up in a probate, that can take a year or
That's a
two
horrible
to
process to
be
go through.
resolved. And
Mhm.
if you have immediate needs, you could really find yourself at a disadvantage in addressing those needs immediately. If you have, students in school, minors, and they
That can
still
cause a big
require care.
disruptions in
Exactly.
life. Yeah.
And what a lot of families are finding is not only are they responsible for minor children, but in some cases, their caregivers are contributing to the care of their parents. Because again, because of long life, you may find that you have aging elders that you too need to extend yourself in some way in terms of supporting, or they may encounter some type of medical emergency that requires, again, some modifications. These days we grow up with families living all across the world. So you might be, performing career wise in one region of the world, but something happens to your elder aging parents and you discover yourself in a situation where you've got to contemplate relocation, even if it's temporarily, or trying to relocate the parents. But all of these different things create circumstances that can be taxing financially, especially on the main breadwinners.
Exactly. Starting retirement early can give you a lot of flexibilities, and you can afford more risks in the earlier years, because that will allow you more time to regain it back later in life. And also, you have an option to retire early. Just imagine if you start planning it at age 20, putting just for example, putting away just $500 or $5,000 a year. I'm just giving an example here. For a person putting away just $5,000 a year at age 25 to 35, by the time they reach to 65, they could have over $600,000 in retirement account. Whereas another person starting saving for 30 years later in life, from age 35 to 65, for a total of 150,000, end up with a lot less compared to the person that started earlier. Another ideal one is you want to start investing early, which is a third profile. If you do put away $5,000 a year annually between age of 25 to and 65, total investment you put in about 200,000, but by the time you retire, you have over $1 million in your account. So, time is money here. And the sooner you start, the better for you. And will give you, the most important thing is peace of mind that you are planning. You'll be much happier. You'll be, having all the time to take care of your family because this is planned already.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is that not only is retirement planning important, if you happen to be an entrepreneur and you own a business, you want to make sure that you're additionally protecting the business with things like key man policies, disability things that allow you to make sure that if something were to happen to the key executives or leaders of that organization, that there are reserves. And so there's different, financial tools. I think that it's about beginning with the end in mind. And I think we have to keep into consideration what type of inflation might exist and the fact of the value of dollars, over time. So $1 million using today's market numbers is going to have a certain buying power versus that same $1 million in 10, in 20, and 30 years will not have the same buying power. So a lot of times you're looking at tools like a discounted cash flow just to consider what the value of those dollars might be. And the one thing that's uncertain is we don't know what the tax rates will
That
be.
is scary, right? We
I
don't know what the future tax rate gonna
Right.
be. Yeah.
So you definitely want to consider all of those elements, and really you should have a bench of professionals who are able to advise you based on your different scenarios, and really put some thought into, beginning with that end in mind. What do you want your 60s, 70s, your 80s, what do you want? Those of you who, are pushing for 120 years and beyond, what do you want your lifestyle to entail, and what type of resources will you need to sustain that particular lifestyle? So, as usual, our time together always goes fast, but if we were thinking about just a few tips that we may want to share with our audience in terms of where they can begin, what are two or three steps that somebody can take to begin their planning process?
Start saving early. Uh, you know, talk to a financial professional that can help you navigate through, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It's depend on how much you can afford, but it's not how much you make; it's how much you save here.
Mhm.
The sooner you start, even just a few dollars a day can make a huge difference for you later on, because it will give you the power compounding interest over time, and also peace of mind that you have something set up for yourself in case of an emergency, for your family, and also you want to have a plan that would last you for a lifetime. Don't get into a plan that until you're 65 it's gone, or 70 it's gone, because we don't know how long we're going to live, right? We could live into 80, 90, or 100. Now medical technology is so well advanced, we could live longer and longer. So you want a plan that will last you for your whole life and give you the flexibilities, that give you tax advantage, that give you retirement income, and also protection from market volatility. So talk to your financial professional for these tips that you wanted to learn. And there's wonderful financial instruments and tips that they have that can help you. And if you don't have one, come to us. We can help you.
Absolutely, absolutely, because not all vehicles are the same. They're not all created equal. And so you don't want to do what oftentimes people do, and there's kind of a one size fits all, or you make a plan and that plan was valid based on the circumstances at the time. But if you look at your family dynamics, things have changed. Maybe you've married, or maybe you've divorced, or maybe you've had children, or maybe your children, you're an empty nester, all of these different changes along your life may influence your needs. And so you just want to have an opportunity to reconsider. You don't want to just, kind of set up, if you will, a plan and, you know, put your head in the sand and hope that in 10 years that it all works out. You have to be a little bit more active and involved, and also you just want to make sure that you speak to several professionals, because there's an education that can be gained just in some of those conversations, and being able to understand a perspective, a different perspective, to help you get to, that desired outcome.
So yeah, remember, it is not too early to start planning for your retirement. The earlier you start, the more time you have to save and invest, and that can lead to more comfortable retirement for you. The bottom line here is planning for retirement it's not just putting the money away in the bank. Um, it's about securing your future life and ensuring your comfort and realizing your dream. So these are, little steps that you can take, and every step is matter, is ensure in you to take a closer to your fulfilling your retirement. So it's never too late to start, but it's never too early to start either. So trying to make a difference, and your future self can thanks you.
Absolutely. Well, next week we're going to have another fantastic conversation where we continue our exploration of helping women in particular, and all who are interested in finding paths to create wealth. And if it is that you find yourself on a journey that you're rebuilding, recovering from economic setbacks or changes, this is the best time. It's what I say, chapter 24 is just started. So clean slate, go through, evaluate, and put some plans in place. What say you, Andrea?
Well, thank you for being with us today. And we are live here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Please join us next week. Until then, save more, invest more for yourself. I wish you have a wonderful for the rest of the week.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for joining us, and see us next week at 10 a.m. Pacific. Be well.